And now, it's that time of the week once again. Welcome to the Departure Lounge podcast with your hosts, Tom Whittle and Steve Wooldridge. Your ticket to the home of aviation podcasts. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight.
Hello, everyone, and a very good evening to you. A warm welcome to episode number 37 of the Departure Lounge podcast here on the Departure Lounge YouTube channel and, of course, Spotify as well if you're listening on there. Hello to you. My name is Tom Whittle, and we are joined for a very special evening tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun, which we'll get into shortly. However, joining me this evening is, of course, my wonderful co-host, Steve Wooldridge. Got it right this time, not like that.
Yeah.
Steve, how are you this evening?
Yeah, no, absolutely fantastic. Hope everyone at home is equally good, and I've been looking forward to this since you announced that she was coming on. So it's going to be an absolute cracker of a show tonight.
It will be. It'll be fantastic. There's lots to go through. There's lots of questions and stuff to answer and everything. So it's definitely going to be a lot of fun. So I'm very much looking forward to it. Also joining us this evening, our resident northern man from the north, Ian Hartley. Ian, good evening to you. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Tom. I'm really good, thank you. Yeah, and you two okay, I guess?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. I'm all good. So, sort of to echo what Steve said, very much looking forward to this. So,
yeah, absolutely.
It's going to be a lot of fun. So yes. What we'll do, we'll move into sort of some housekeeping first, and then we'll get into the bulk of this evening's show. So throughout this evening, we'll be putting up our social medias, so you can follow not just the channel, you can follow Steve and you can follow Ian as well. We'll put those out as the evening rolls on. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are on Spotify as well. So this episode will go out tomorrow onto Spotify, so do keep an eye on that. And of course, you can listen to every other episode that we've done, all 36 of them so far, if you so wish to, by taking us anywhere you go. Also, if you wish to become a guest on the show, just like tonight's guest, do drop us a message and we'll get you on pretty much anytime. We've got plenty of space at this moment, so if you've had to come on for a chat, let us know and we'll get you on. So, we'll say, there's only got just the one in there so far, but that's fine. Marco Barrett says, evening, guys. So, good evening to you. Also, Grey Blue saying, evening, guys. I was exited for the show. I hate to pick up on spelling mistakes, but yeah.
Well, no, maybe she means from quarantine last week. She's exited from quarantine. It could be what she means.
Very good shout. Very good shout. If you want to say hello to us, you can put us into the chat and we will show it on screen throughout the evening. Of course, any questions you may have for tonight's guest as well, put them into the chat and we'll get them asked to her. So, speaking of this evening's guest, she is an international airline pilot and an award-winning author who is joining us to talk about her glittering career in aviation and, of course, to discuss her brand new book. Of course, it's in the title. So joining us this evening is Laura Savino. Laura, a very good evening / afternoon to you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Honestly, a little nervous to be here.
As we said, there's nothing to worry about. We don't bite. We're all good here. so it's absolutely fine. But yeah, so anybody, like I said, anybody got any questions for Laura, do stick them into the chat and we'll ask her any questions you may have throughout the show tonight. But yeah, let's get straight into it. So anybody that might not know anything about you, Laura, do you want to just give a quick sort of proper introduction? I gave a brief one, but do you want to give a proper introduction to yourself?
I loved your introduction.
Thank you.
I'm Laura Savino. I mean, lots of things, but I'm a captain for United Airlines. I'm not flying now, I'm medically grounded, but I was a captain for many, many years and had a great career. And now I've written a book about it, hopefully to help people behind me, um, make things a little easier for them, see some of the mistakes that I made and contribute, in any way that I can.
Fantastic. Let's get sort of into kind of how you got into sort of aviation and where the sort of inspiration to get into it came from, sort of thing. So, how did you get into? What inspired you to sort of go into the aviation industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think I have a little bit of a different story than the average pilot. I started off. I had never met a pilot. I grew up in an era when I have great parents, but I grew up in a generation where I was raised with very limited views on the world. I mean, this was before there was any internet or really more than like 3 TV stations. And you only knew what it was that was in your immediate bubble, what your parents showed you, maybe your teachers, what you experienced yourself. And I had never met a pilot, didn't have a neighbor, relative, friend, nobody. And so flying wasn't something that I was ever exposed to. So I never envisioned aviation as being a part of my life when I was a child. And I lived very close to Newark Airport. So throughout my childhood, I'd see airplanes coming and going overhead. And ends up I was in the departure arrivals corridor for Newark. Didn't know that at the time. So I always had a fascination with those incredible machines flying overhead, but it wasn't anything that I ever pictured myself being a part of, and certainly not anything that anybody I knew pictured me being a part of. Not only did I never know any pilots, but at the time, I'm a child from the 60s, I'm dating myself, but, women simply, they weren't in positions like that. STEM was not something that women were, naturally considered, encouraged to go into. And women really weren't flying in the military yet. They were I had not even seen any like doctors or lawyers or anything like that were female, much less a woman airline pilot. So, so I got into it. Really what happened for me was when I got older, I became more and more curious when it came to airplanes, but it wasn't anything I could really ask anybody about because it would come off as being kind of weird to be interested in airplanes.
Yeah.
And when I got older and I got my driver's license, I was out in my mom's station wagon one day and out exploring, and I discovered a local airport that was about 11 miles away, Morristown Municipal, just a small municipal airport, and was just exploring. I wanted to see if I could see an airplane, and I ended up stumbling into a flight school, and I had no idea that you could take flying lessons. I mean, who knew? Back then, I knew you could take like piano lessons and maybe dance lessons, that sort of thing. Had no idea that this was something that even existed. So that blew my mind. I went in there, and before I knew it, they had $20 from me, my gas money, and I was up in the air for a $20 discovery flight. And having never, there was no internet, so I'd never seen a cockpit. I'd never seen the ground from the sky. I had absolutely no idea. I don't think I'd ever been on an airplane at that point. Had no idea what it was going to be like to be up in the air or to see, to look down and see the ground from altitude. And it was just an absolutely amazing, stunning experience for me as a teenager. And really, that's how I got into it. I just desperately wanted to go up and do that again. I had no aspirations to become an airline pilot at that point. I just wanted to do whatever I could to maybe get in the airplane a second time. And I was able to do that. But then, things stopped very quickly for me because it's expensive to, just to go up in an airplane under any circumstance. And long story short, I ended up talking the owner of the flight school into giving me a job. And I worked there. Basically, we had a deal. I worked for free in exchange for flying lessons. And initially, all I wanted was just to get up again. And I didn't have any long-term goals. And after I was up a few times, it occurred to me, boy, you know what? If I keep doing this, I bet you I could solo the airplane. And that was my ultimate, starry-eyed ambition, was to go solo. And I did that. And like any goal, once it's behind you, you're like, okay, so I did that. So what's next? And then I started to think, well, shoot, I could maybe go all the way and get my private pilot's license, my PPL. And that just seemed like such a far off ambition. I couldn't imagine actually achieving all that. But by the time I graduated high school, I did. I got my pilot's license. And really that's how it all started for me. And then, just one step at a time, I eventually made it to an airline. But I had no ambitions, no long-term goals of becoming an airline pilot at that point. It was just one, moving forward one little step at a time. And eventually I made it to United.
How did your sort of friends and family react when you said you wanted to take up flying as a sort of more of a full-time thing?
Yeah, well, so I didn't really tell anybody. So when I was flying in high school, I kept it a secret. I didn't tell any of my friends or any of my peers. I was actually a cheerleader in high school. I had a reputation to maintain. And I knew that if I was flying airplanes, that absolutely, this is back when bullying was still cool and everything. I knew the kids would make fun of me and mock me. And I just loved it so much. I didn't want to even go there. So I didn't tell anybody. It's something I did after school every day, and I did on weekends. And I kept my two worlds separate. My aviation friends who were amazing, and we were all on the same page, and it was very encouraging. And I felt at the airport, I felt like I could just be me. Like you don't have any of those teenage angst where you're worried about, wearing the same jeans or all the stuff that you worry about as a teenager. And so I kept my two worlds separate. And my parents knew that I was at the airport, and I think they knew that I was taking flying lessons, whatever the definition of flying lessons was. But I was really fortunate in that they didn't really ask. Like I would go home and it just really never came up. I remember like my first solo, I just went and, helped my mom with dinner and sat down and didn't even say a word to anybody. So there really wasn't much of a reaction until I got older. And then, I don't know, like, honestly, it wasn't, my friends were all pilots. And so it was just very normal. And my parents, I'm one of 4 kids, and they were super busy, and we have a family business. And, they knew what I was doing, but it wasn't really the top of conversation, honestly.
Yeah, I think for what it's worth, you would have been the coolest person in our school. I think everyone would have been tapping you up for flights and that. So, time to obviously change a little bit. I'd have been thrilled if we had a pilot at our school, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, maybe that would have been the case. I don't know. I just didn't risk it.
Yeah, no, of course.
Wonderful. So it's almost like you had a sort of a taste for the flying, and then all of a sudden, once you had that sort of experience to start off with, it was a case of you instantly knew what you wanted to do after that.
Yeah, and that's, as any pilot, well, I think my story probably is the same as any other pilot's. Once you get up in the air, you either love it or it's not for you. And if you love it, you love it. And it's just it's not anything that you can help, it's I hate to use the word passion because that's just so overused, but it's a passion. It's an excitement. And it was very exciting for me. And I liked excitement. And it was unlike, I lived a very boring childhood. I had a great childhood, but I lived in the suburbs. My parents, I was raised very Italian Catholic. I had my duties and my chores, and expectations for me, I think, were very limited. And if for my, not only was I raised that way, but I think my parents, expected me to grow up and be a housewife and get married. And I just, when I went to the airport, it brought a feeling in me that I had never experienced. And it just kept getting better and better. And yeah, it's a story probably of any pilot that gets up in the air.
Yeah, absolutely. What was the sort of progress from like getting your private pilot license to sort of becoming commercial pilot?
What happened in between there? Well, so after I got my private pilots, I went to college. I went to Purdue, and I went there majoring in art because that's what my mother wanted me to major in. But I chose Purdue because it has a great aviation program. In fact, I think they hold the record of astronauts. I think 27 astronauts graduated from Purdue.
Wow.
More astronauts than from any of the military academies. Amelia Earhart, she was flying a Purdue aircraft. She was when she went missing, she was flying the Lockheed Electra, which was a Purdue aircraft, and she was actually flying a Flying Purdue laboratory, and her entire final flight was funded by Purdue. And in fact, my son now is a student at Purdue, and his dorm is Earhart Hall. And so I knew that Purdue had the best flight program, and I could go there in a different major because my parents approved of me majoring in art. And so that was the way in my mind to get my foot in the door. So I went there in a different major. And then when I got there, I transferred, which was a very long story, but I transferred into the flight program. And then from there, as I was saying, there was no pathway. I think that was probably the biggest challenge. Is now I think you can go on the internet and you can see specifically what you need to do, what comes next to become a pilot. But back then, it was just all a guessing game. So I, was in the flight program. I got my flight instructor certificate, and then I got my double I, and I started flight instructing. And of course, that built hours. I was a flight instructor at Purdue, which was cool. I would go back to Morristown in the summers and work there as a flight instructor, which is really great when everyone sees you as a student pilot, and then you come back as a flight instructor. So that was really fun. And then from there, I graduated, and like most pilots in my generation, I just did all sorts of really horrible, dangerous things that I don't think exist anymore. I flew canceled checks at night out of Teterboro in airplanes that were falling apart. I worked for a banner towing company at the Jersey Shore. We flew Citabrias. I did charter. I did freight. I did just anything, anything. I was an aircraft repossessor. I would go sneak in and repossess aircraft in the middle of the night, people that didn't pay up. So just all sorts of crazy things. And then I got my first airline job for Eastern Airlines, but I was flying for the Regional Eastern Express. And that was amazing. My first uniform, my first official flight bag. And probably the most exciting part about getting hired by an airline, even though it was a small one, was I suddenly wasn't alone in the cockpit. And not only did I have another pilot, but there was a dispatcher who was taking care of things. And we had meteorologists that would tell, give us the weather forecast. And we had, mechanics that would step in and take care of any problems that you had. And you suddenly become a team member, not just like a single pilot, gung-ho, all by yourself, superwoman. There were other people that took a lot of the responsibilities off of my shoulders. And so that was great. And then Frank Lorenzo came in, and Eastern Airlines went, we went on strike, and that was a mechanics. Won't get into all that. But in any case, Eastern folded. I was out of work, furloughed, as were thousands of other pilots on the East Coast. But then got picked up by Pan Am, Pan American World Airways, and I was flying there. They had acquired ATR 42s at that time. So even though I was working for Pan Am, I was flying the ATRs, which was really cool. I was based out of JFK. And then from there, just building flight time, eventually got hired by United Airlines. And that was it. Last uniform in the closet.
Fantastic. So as obviously, I think we'll address sort of, quite we'll not say like a taboo subject, but like as a woman in aviation, how difficult was it to have that sort of first airline job? Like, was it sort of, obviously nowadays it's maybe a little bit easier because of the equality thing, but was it difficult back then to kind of get sort of an airline job as a woman working in aviation?
I'll tell you the truth. I in hindsight, I think it was. At the time, I was, I think, oblivious to. There were people that clearly, didn't want me there. There were presumptions. I I was somewhat naive to it. I think that so when I was flying, there was certainly that percentage of other pilots or other colleagues, mechanics or whatever, that were just blatantly rude to me, or would call me like, oh, quota girl, or things like that. People that had no idea what my qualifications were. So yeah, I mean, that happened. But that was really the exception. I think most people, if they weren't happy that I was there, they just talked about me behind my back, and I didn't know it. I think probably the hardest part back then was there were a lot of presumptions that were pretty obvious. Like I'm only 5'3", so I'm pretty small. And when you walk into flight operations, the procedures. You walk in flight operations. This is at any airline. You're flying with someone that probably you've never met in your entire life.
Yeah.
And you introduce yourself and you shake hands. And I definitely unpleasant responses. When you walk into ops and you're, say, a 6'2" man, you've got gray hair, with a nice comb over, and you've got a deep gravelly voice. It's just presumed that you are qualified and competent, and whether you are or not, that's just the assumption until you prove otherwise. But if you walk in, you look like me, especially if it's 30 years ago, the assumption is really quite the opposite. And some guys would make really derogatory comments to me. Most did not. Most were great. And I still knew that I had to do a really good job. Just one brick in the wall at a time is how you change opinions. But I remember one captain, this is just like a small example, one captain I was flying with who was a great guy, and I had no idea he had any qualms with flying with me at all. And we were coming into Chicago, and the controller gave us a quick descent, which happens in Chicago, get down, slow down at the same time. And he turned to me and he said, now, don't get flustered. And I thought, don't get flustered. Don't get flustered. What, like it was just such a random telling, of how he viewed me, and I had no idea. So
that would have been a good conversation for the black box to play back to see how you reacted.
Like, why would I get flustered? Like, who else do you say that to? So, and then I think another part of the challenge was, I think just generally fear. I think the passengers sometimes would get nervous when they saw that I was like their captain, when I became captain, or even when I was the first officer. And it wasn't like anything I took personally. I think that a lot of people, when they fly, they're nervous, and it's and a lot of unknown factors, and they instantly feel comfortable. And it's not like it's intentional or like it's any act, against women or anything. But again, if you're a passenger and you're a little bit nervous, you look in the cockpit and you see these gray-haired men, you just feel comforted. And then if you look up, and I was really young back then, so I looked really young, and you see me in command, people would just get anxious, and I would get comments from flight attendants, that passengers were anxious or nervous. We had passengers walk off the airplane when they saw I was their captain. Again, nothing personal. They just felt like it wasn't safe.
No,
That's unbelievable, isn't it? Really is.
It is. Yeah, I mean, it is now. But this was, we're talking, a long time ago, decades ago. And honestly, I never felt insulted. I was kind of flattered. I know that sounds a little strange, I guess. Saying it out loud sounds a little strange. But I was in a position that people just couldn't believe, or they doubted. But I really was in that position, and I was the captain of the airplane, and I was in command. And if people walked off the airplane, I was like, wow, I guess I'm doing something that people just can't believe. So that, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, you probably find a lot of the hostility from the other pilots was sort of almost like they're intimidated that someone sort of younger and smarter was sort of coming up through and perhaps taking their position at some point. So again, it's a compliment to you.
I did. I remember I was flying this one first officer who was retired military, and I was the captain on the flight. And I remember he turned to me and he goes, I know, he goes, this is probably really uncomfortable for you flying with me and you being in the left seat. He goes, but I'm going to, I'm going to be easy on you. And it's like, he assumed that I was embarrassed that I was in charge of him. And I wasn't embarrassed by that. But, I would get comments like that fairly frequently. So what can you do?
No, definitely. Excuse me.
Your let's say you went on to Pan Am, which had just a ridiculously massive company. Like we spoke about them the other week, sort of going out the skies and how sort of famous they are in the aviation world. How was it to go and work for them?
Do you know, I loved working for Pan Am. It was when I got hired by Pan Am, I assumed I was set for life. I mean, it was like the nation's flag carrier. It was, everyone knew of Pan Am. And I just assumed, well, I mean, this is it. It's over. Like, I'm never going to have to interview again. I'm never going to have to, deal with being furloughed or insecurities. It felt really good. We had, we wore the white hats, so we stood out. We didn't look like any other pilots in the airport terminal. There was definitely a sense of pride flying for Pan Am. And again, I was based out of JFK. I was only flying the ATRs, but I knew that I would be moving up, pretty quickly to the international wide bodies. And I really looked forward to flying with these, they called them sky gods. The Pan Am pilots were called sky gods. And,
Really?
it was something that I was really excited about. But then, Pan Am went into a financial downward spiral. We sold off our Pacific routes to United Airlines. And that was really, that was really the beginning of the end.
Yeah, of course, because we say, as Steve mentioned, we spoke quite intensively, didn't we? Or extensively, I should say, about Pan Am. And it wasn't just as well, I suppose, as I see it, because I had family members that worked for Pan Am as well, before I was born, obviously. But it was almost like it wasn't just an airline, it was like a global brand of some sort, wasn't it? Because, like you say, everybody knew the Pan Am logo, the Pan Am name itself. So everybody knew what Pan Am was. Like I say, it was almost like a global brand, wasn't it, at the time?
Yeah, it was exciting to fly for Pan Am. I still have my Pan Am uniform in my closet downstairs. And, every now and then I pinched myself that I was so privileged, and just fortunate that I got to experience that, while they were still around. And back then, airline, it was different, back then, being an airline pilot, I think had a lot more status, I don't know, than it does now, because there really weren't startup carriers, there weren't low cost carriers, and every flying experience at the time was, just a really, really special experience for people. And being a part of that was really exciting. And again, not anything that I ever expected what's going to be in the future until it happened.
Yeah, fantastic. We'll take a quick step away from this from now. Ian, we've got a few comments to go through and an apology as well, if you'd like to just give that a quick read.
Yeah, well, Grey Blue's apologising for a spelling mistake. She spelled exited and not excited. So she's apologising. Yeah, by the way, I've got to say sorry to me dad for not being able to wear the departure lounge top because it was creased, so I couldn't wear the t-shirt I wanted to wear. Because when I asked her to hang it up, she's not hung up. She's a teenager, Laura, so nothing gets hung up, does it? It just gets thrown. So that was the end of that. And Michael Barrett's asking, which type of aircraft did you learn to fly in?
Oh, well, when I was in high school, my most of my training was in the Cessna 152 because it was just the cheapest airplane. So that's what I started off in. And then at Purdue, we flew. Our primary training was in the Piper Warrior. So those were my first primary aircraft.
Yeah,
and they have. I mean, a 152 is still 152.
Yeah, I mean, they're standard, aren't they? I think everybody learns to fly in a 152, don't they, from the start, don't they? I think that's what everyone takes the PPL in, isn't it? Yeah, you see it all the time. And then Grey Blue, which is my daughter, by the way, she's asking, what do you think you'd be doing if airplanes didn't exist?
What would I be doing if airplanes didn't exist? I think I'd be writing a book about airplanes.
Futuristic flying machines.
Yeah, futuristic flying machines. Yeah. There you go. Futuristic flying machines. Yeah.
I probably would have gone into drones or something else, something else aviation related. I don't know what it would have been, but I would have found my way there.
Yeah. It's funny how you sort of paths led you there.
Mm-hmm.
It really, really is. Yeah, it's quite very, very interesting. I found it quite interesting about not actually saying anything to your parents about doing it, because I think if I'd gone up in an experienced flight or something and then started doing flying lessons, I'd want everyone to know. I wouldn't. It's not something I want to keep to myself. It'd sort of be, you'd be dying to tell somebody, wouldn't you? It's really. But looking back then, what was normal then? We look back to when you were younger. I suppose when I was younger as well, and we think how ridiculous things were back then. But at the time, it was just normal, wasn't it? It was just normal life, and that's how things were, wasn't it?
Yeah, and plus today, people put so much of their lives out, on social media and online.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm guilty of that too. But back then, people were much more private. Like people really didn't know what was going on in other people's lives. And it was just very normal. And I was kind of thankful that my parents weren't that interested, because I don't think they really approved. I know my mom was not happy that I was flying, not because she thought it was dangerous, but because she thought it was unfeminine. And I think she had other, she wanted me to get married and all that stuff, and which I did and have kids, but it wasn't what my parents envisioned for me. And so it wasn't something that really came up in the house.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if you could go back to sort of when you started with what you know now, would you sort of give yourself different advice or change anything that you did at the start?
Gosh, what would I say to my younger self? I think I don't think I would really change anything, because everything worked out really well. I think I would maybe tell myself, I think one piece of advice would be, I always went for everything. And there are times where I felt like I didn't deserve to be there, because maybe I got scared, or I, didn't take a flight. This is before I was with the airlines. And I think I was really hard on myself. And I think one piece of advice I'd give myself would be, you don't always have to say yes. You can quit, you can give up. Sometimes that doesn't sound like good advice, does it?
It's good enough for me.
It's okay if there's something that you don't want to do because you don't think it's safe. It's not that you don't have the right stuff, or it's not that you don't deserve to be there. Sometimes it's okay to not do something, and that that's happened to me. There are times where I didn't take a flight or something because there were problems with the airplane, and then someone else took it, and then I berated myself that, what's wrong with me? I don't have as much nerve as that person has. And I think I would definitely tell myself that's being professional, and that's using good judgment. And that's okay. It's okay sometimes to fold your cards and say, this isn't right for me. And
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you were saying earlier on that obviously the Pan Am stuff came to an end. So where did the career path take you after you left there?
Well, I was lucky that I jumped ship before it sank completely. So Pan Am was going down. We had sold off our routes to our really profitable Pacific routes, the Asian routes, to United. And at that point, I started, secretly interviewing at other airlines, because I knew that Pan Am was going to fold. I interviewed at TWA and at United. I got hired by both. Also, TWA is another company that's not around anymore. And back then, the interview process was very long. It took about 6 months. And you went back and forth. And so I was continuously going back and forth to St. Louis for TWA, and then to Colorado, to Denver for United. And um, while flying for Pan Am. And again, boy, I had a lot of secrets, come to think of it. Of course, I couldn't tell people that I was doing that, but I mean, pilots do that. I think probably everybody, secretly interviews other places, wherever you are.
Yeah.
And, so again, I was flying for Pan Am and going through this very long process with United and with TWA, and ultimately got offered a job by both those companies. And TWA at the time was already starting to falter. So I went to United, and turned out to be a really good decision.
Yeah,
far,
absolutely.
So you've been obviously quite blessed to have such a resume of aircraft that you've flown, because we spoke on Monday before the show, and going through sort of the vast amount of aircraft that you've flown. I suppose it'd be impossible to try and pick which one would be, or like a top 3 or something that would be your favorite if you could jump into a plane again. What ones would you have? Because, like I say, your resume of what you've flown is incredible.
Thank you. My resume is incredible just because I worked for United, and they flew every Boeing that existed, and so I got to go through each aircraft as I moved up the ladder. I was just fortunate that I was with an airline that offered that. As far as like my favorite aircraft, of course, whatever aircraft you're currently flying is your favorite aircraft. And that's just the way that it is. I would say if I had to pick one in hindsight, I think I would go with the 777. And I say that because the 777 was designed and developed in a collaboration with Boeing and United. And so it didn't exist. And for years, United and our union, ALPA, they were working closely with Boeing to design the 777, and we were their launch customer. And I was really, really fortunate that my seniority just fell into place perfectly with when we got the 777, I could bid it. And I was I wasn't like the first pilot on it, but I was definitely in that very first wave of pilots to ever be a pilot on the 777. And of course, you see it everywhere now. But at the time, we would, fly. We're flying all around the world. It's a incredibly, safe workhorse international wide body aircraft. And we would go wherever we went. Other pilots would come over to our gate and ask permission, if they could come and see our cockpit. I remember the flight crew of the Concorde actually at Heathrow once stopped in and asked permission if we could show them our cockpit.
Wow.
Come on in. So it was really exciting. It was really exciting being on a brand new airplane that basically no one else had flown yet. So that was a really fun experience, and it was just a great airplane to fly. It was a great airplane to fly, and then I guess my second choice would be Airbus. I ended up leaving Boeing and going over to the Airbus, the A319, A320 at United, and the cockpits are designed that you can go into any Airbus, and you'd be very hard pressed to tell the difference between like a 350 and a 319, other than there might be a couple extra throttles, but the cockpits are designed to be very synonymous. And so flying Airbus was really fun because it was completely different than Boeing. The philosophy of flying, just the way the systems are set up, it's just a very different way of thinking. And so that was really fun. For me, I know a lot of pilots like to kind of stick with the same thing because it's a lot easier in training, but I was always of the mindset, like, give me something I haven't seen before, I haven't done before. And I, just switching from a yoke to a stick, to a side stick was really fun. It was something different. And again, nothing that I thought that I would get to do in my career, and getting to do that, was exciting.
Yeah. So it's with obviously the Airbuses and stuff, there's almost like they're universal, aren't they? Because once you've got into one, you can then pretty much go into like all the others, like you say, with maybe one or two fine adjustments, from sort of 319s and stuff going into like 330s, 340s, etc. Just that sort of, that sort of thing. So I suppose if you're working on the Airbus side of things, that made things a lot easier for you to learn another sort of aircraft type.
Well, United, we only have the 319 and the 320, so I didn't go to other Airbus.
Cool.
But it's pretty genius. I mean, I love Boeing, I love Airbus. Don't ask me to choose. But it's really a pretty genius concept that Airbus has that synonymous philosophy. And where Boeing, Boeing's amazing, and there's a lot of things that are similar, but you go from one Boeing to another Boeing, and they're just very different aircraft. But Airbus doesn't do that, and Airbus is it's fun. It's nice having a tray table. You can put your crew meal on a table.
That's all that matters at this point.
Yeah.
They've got a table. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
You don't know how much food has been spilled in cockpits all over the years. It's actually a really big deal. More than you would know.
Brilliant. A couple more comments, Ian, if we just quickly go through those.
So Rob Brown Aviation's with us now. So good evening to you, Rob. A big hello and welcome to Laura. Thanks for sharing your experiences, you say. So nice.
We
Rob.
have good people watching us.
We do, don't we? And Martin Wooldridge he's in the show as well. Hi, not had a chance to say good evening. Too captivated by the show. So absolutely fantastic.
I'll take that over.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Actually. I'm really, captivated by it as well. To be quite honest, yeah.
Brilliant. So obviously, just a quick one on this one. Obviously, with United being sort of the launch customer and helping to kind of design and bring into service the 777, with the sort of the announcement made about the Boom Overture, which is Concorde 2.0. What are your thoughts on that in terms of United obviously having a contribution in that design as well?
Yeah, I don't know a lot about that. I because I'm not involved in that. But I think it's really interesting, and I think that like aviation is always surprising me. Like the Concorde, that went out and never to return again, as we all believed. And now who knows? Who knows? So I'm very optimistic of what's gonna come next. And won't be for me, but the next generation, which I'm all about encouraging. Get out there. It's time for me to pass the wand, and it's exciting to think that other people will get to have the same thrills that I got to have, with new aircraft. So
absolutely, yeah. I think it's fascinating that the idea of supersonic travel nowadays, considering how far in advance Concorde was at the time, is now making its way back in. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity, and one that hopefully, fingers crossed, it actually sort of goes ahead and plays a big part in sort of shaping the future of aviation for everybody. So I
think United are kind of committed to making it more accessible to the masses. Rather, sort of Concorde was incredibly elite, wasn't it? But I think United are sort of more. Obviously, it's still going to be expensive, but I think it's sort of going to be within reach of more people than Concorde certainly was.
Well, the whole philosophy, I think, of the airlines has changed over the years. I mean, the Concorde. Nobody flew the Concorde except for British Airways and Air France, and there was a reason for that. It's because it was enormously expensive to fly, and you couldn't just sell tickets to the market. And so the U.S. airlines never picked up on that for that reason. A number of different reasons. But I don't think that United is going to take up an aircraft that would just be designed for the elite, because that's just not who the company is. That line of thinking is just no longer with us, at least definitely not here in the U.S. So if they do it, they'll do it right. They'll do it so that that people can really access it. But who knows? There are people that are definitely more brilliant than me that know how all that. I'm just the dumb pilot. I just fly it. But, honestly, but like we have engineers and all sorts of people that really just blow my mind. And my son actually is studying to be an engineer, and one of these days he's going to blow my mind, I'm sure.
Be coming home with all the technical stuff for you.
That's it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So on a sort of another very quick note before we move on to sort of some other subjects and stuff, do you have a sort of a favorite airport to fly into and fly out of in particular, like anywhere in the world?
Favorite airport? Gosh, every airport's fun. I think United flies to like 360 airports. And so we get to go to so many different places. I'm based here in Washington, and I think DCA is probably one of the most fun airports to fly into anywhere in the world because there's short runways. All the runways are surrounded by water. There's prohibited areas everywhere. The approaches, we come in visual and we're like the river visual, you're following the Potomac and just doing all sorts of crazy maneuvers, like almost right down to touchdown. So
Yeah.
I think that's, just right in my own backyard. That's really fun. Most airports that are really fun to fly into are for smaller airplanes. Once you start flying wide bodies, the airports that you fly into are big, huge, stable airports, and they're not that challenging because they're designed, for 777s and things like that. But it's the smaller airports that really, when you're in the smaller airplanes, you can, fly into mountainous terrain and fly non-precision approaches and, the crazier stuff. But I'll tell you, probably the most fun airport I ever flew into, since we're on this, I used to do flights into Cuba.
Okay.
Back years ago, for a small window, they had opened up to charter flights. United Airlines was doing those charters. And what was really fun about Cuba was that the airport, I don't want to insult anybody, the airport was very not modernized. And the runway lights literally were plugged in. And so the whole time you're running over extension cords. And there was also a train tracks that crossed over the center of the runway.
Wow.
So, the kind of stuff that like you just look back and you think, no way, would any of this fly pretty much anywhere in the world. But if you want to fly into Cuba, you're going the thump over all the extension cords, the lights, and then you go over the train tracks. And it's like, this is crazy. This cannot be real. But I think that was probably the most fun I ever had was doing the Cuba trips.
Probably a good thing that they paid their electric bill every time. Then I'm guessing, just in case if you're on approach and all of a sudden,
They have technology to have, underground, just the, all the wiring, everything that comes that we just take for granted at airports.
Yeah. Now every time I look at extension cords and everything, I'm going to start thinking of Cuba.
Yeah.
But no, that's fantastic. So I mean, we could literally like sit here like for hours upon hours talking about obviously your career and stuff, and we may get back to it at some point this evening. However, for those people obviously that don't know, and as we put up onto the thing, you're actually an award-winning author as well, aren't you?
I am a whole second life, a whole second passion in life to pursue. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you've recently just bought a book out, haven't you, as well, called Jet Boss. And you've actually got a copy with you, haven't you? When you're on the spot now.
I did have a copy. So this is actually my only copy because it's so new. I've not gotten my box. My son actually bought this off of Amazon. So my only copy is just a copy that we bought off of Amazon. My box should be coming any day now. But yeah, so when I was grounded, so when I was grounded, I'm used to being very busy. And I had actually started writing when I was, so 9/11, when 9/11 happened, I was at our flight training center. And it was just a horrific day, a horrible experience. And our classes were canceled and we're stuck at the training center and we couldn't fly out because everything was grounded. And I just started writing, like kind of journaling, like what the heck was going on. It was just such a surreal experience. And that's really what started me writing. And then that kind of led to, I just really not with the intention of publishing it, but I just started writing down different flying experiences that I had because I realized that there's so many things that happen in the cockpit behind the scenes that people really have no idea. And the different books that I've read written by pilots, it's a very macho sort of blustery sort of, cowboy cockpit experience. And it's not really like that. So I sort of put, like I guess a mother's touch, a woman's touch on what the experience is like. And that's really where this came from. Like, that's the foundation of the book. But then as time went on and many years later, then I was grounded and had a lot more time, recently. And then this whole Me Too movement came into play. And I started to realize that there was a lot that I experienced that I hadn't really thought about that I could also put into a book, and maybe some of those shared experiences would help the generation behind me. And that's really what this book is about. It's an inside reveal, and it's also it goes into kind of like the history of like just women in aviation. Just from my own personal experience, how things have changed from when I started to what they're like today, and just hopefully will show girls that STEM is something that's tangible and real, and that they can step right into. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions. I think a lot of it's still hard. There's only like 5% of airline pilots are female. And the airlines, they want diversity. They're trying to recruit women, and it's hard. It's still hard. And I think that there's a lot of misconceptions still among just the population that to be a pilot, you have to be gifted in like mathematics or science and things like that. And that's just not true, because I am proof that's not true. So, I think that STEM is just part of everyday life. It's tangible, it's hands-on. I think everybody's good at different STEM, different aspects of STEM, and they just don't recognize that they're doing math and science and physics. And so I try to, this book, I just try to put a very tangible, realistic presentation of like what you can be doing, and how so many things are within your reach that maybe you don't envision for yourself.
Yeah, so I know there's a company sort of operating in Britain, EasyJet, and they're certainly doing their best to employ a lot more women. As TV show on TV over here, sort of documenting the passage these pilots are taking to get into aviation. But like you say, the numbers still aren't quite what they should be, are they? That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's definitely changing. When I started flying, like the percentage of female pilots, like it wasn't even a percentage, because it was so far below 1%. It wasn't even a statistic yet. And now it's up to over 5%. So that's, things are definitely moving forward. But I don't know. I wish I knew what the magic wand, was needed to encourage girls to enter STEM fields. But I think that girls are very, very capable of it. I think that they would really love it and enjoy it. And for some reason, it's just not something that, many young girls picture for themselves. And I think that's because they don't have a really accurate picture of, of what life is like, and how much fun it would be for them, and how capable they are. So that's what I'm trying to change. That's my my goal now. I'm really lucky that I got to fulfill my passion in life to become an airline pilot. And when I was grounded, it was really devastating and shocking, and not anything that I saw coming. But you know what? Now I'm doing something else. Now I've become an author. I actually have won a couple awards and came in first place in a big writing competition. And I'm really lucky that I am enjoying this a lot too. And so who knew? When the door closes, another door opens, or find a window to climb through. And before you know it, you're doing something else with your life that turns out to be, also really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was going to ask your son's obviously in education now, sort of in the aviation sector. Is there sort of plenty of sort of females in that on his course, sort of paving the way?
No, it's really fun. Actually, I have two sons. One is at Purdue, and it's interesting because it's great. It's my alma mater, so now I have an excuse to go out there. I get to go visit him. But I was talking to a, a woman who's the head of, and I'm trying to remember her exact title, but she's like the head of the engineering technology department, and she is tasked with trying to recruit more women. And I'm trying to remember what the number was, but she said there were something like only 17% of their engineers were female. And Purdue has been trying really, really hard to recruit more women into engineering. And she was actually asking me, do you have any ideas how we can encourage girls to come over here? So it's, I don't know. It's interesting because certainly women became, generations ago, women started becoming doctors and other, lawyers, all sorts of things that were traditionally just for men. But there are some things that just haven't broken through yet. And aviation is one of those. I think engineering is one of those.
Yeah, no, it's obviously a real shame, and obviously sort of with help and encouragement from yourself, hopefully a few more ladies, women will sort of take the path down to it, because obviously your love for it, you've not regretted a moment, so people can see just how a good an occupation it would be if they sort of took the chance on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I will say there are a lot of organizations now that didn't exist. I mean, I'm a member of like the 99s, which is a female pilot organization that was founded by Amelia Earhart. ISA 21, which is an association just for female airline pilots, and some other, there are other, other organizations. And so there's definitely a support system now of women encouraging other women that didn't exist not that long ago. And I think that's really cool. I think that makes a difference, to not feel isolated, to have other women ahead of you. When I started, I never had any woman ahead of me that I could like ask questions or, go to for advice. I never flew with a female captain until I was a female captain. I never had a female flight instructor. I never had a female boss. And, it worked out for me. That was fine. But for a lot of people, it's really hard if you have to see it to be it. And, I didn't have any support system, but I think in hindsight, if I did, it would have made a lot of things a lot easier for me and would have been very encouraging. And so I am, really happy to see that there are a lot of groups now. And I get to be a part of that. I get to be on the other end, on the end of passing the torch. And I love that. So.
Yeah, no, it must be absolutely lovely if you can inspire even one or two. Then it'd be such a pat on the back for sort of your years of work and service that you've encouraged someone else into the industry. It would be a real string to your bow, wouldn't it, if that happened?
Yeah, I hope so. It's string to my bow. Yeah. I hadn't thought of it like that, but yeah. I mean, it's fun. I mean, who doesn't want to like have a positive impact in other people's lives? I mean, other than your family and your children. I find that really exciting to think that I would be able to just answer questions for somebody that maybe didn't have someone else to ask those questions. So yeah. It's great. It's great to be in that position. I'm very, very lucky.
Have you never thought about going around to like high schools and colleges and things like that and going into these like engineering departments and sort of trying to promote, females in industry that way? Is that something you do?
I actually am just starting to do that. I've gone and talked to some schools. I've talked to Girl Scout troops, Boy Scout troops. By the way, I love boys too. I have two sons. I mean, I'm all for everybody, going out there and figuring out what it is that they want to do and then just going for it. I am just now starting to get asked to speak to different groups. And I having the book out, that kind of gets you recognized a little bit, where people like just are aware of you. And I don't charge anything, like, please invite me. I will come and speak to your group. If you have a book club or something, I would love to, answer any questions you have. School, I actually have been doing I've been doing a series of talks in the United Kingdom. Uh, uh, so you guys know more about this than I do, but high schoolers at some point have to choose if they want to go math, science, or liberal arts. And I got asked about a year ago to come and do virtual presentations to the different classes to introduce them to STEM and to talk about the different things they can do in STEM, and not just being a pilot, but like at an airline. Airlines are amazing to work for. Not only do you get to fly free anywhere that your airline flies, so if you fly for like a major airline, you get to go anywhere you want in the world for free, and so does your friends, family, relatives. But there are a lot of really amazing jobs there. A pilot is one of them. But we have our own meteorology department. We have dispatchers, which they are our flight followers. They plan our flights. They hold our hands when we're in the air. They follow our aircraft. The whole time we're up there, and are always giving us information and helping us along. There are mechanics who work on the airplanes, and my God, I mean, our mechanics are highly skilled, intelligent, trained, sophisticated, professionals. And airplanes are very computerized now. It's not like they're just out there with the wrench, although they are. But there's a lot of really good, STEM jobs at an airline.
Yeah.
I just think that people are largely unaware of them. Unless you have a family heritage in aviation, people don't really think about the airlines and these different occupations. So,
I know my daughter. She went to an all girls school, and STEM was a massive part of the. It's what they call the options. It's when they get to year 9, and they have to take these options. And STEM was a massive part of the options. And we have, where I live in Preston, up in Lancashire, we have it's the Eurofighter Typhoon manufacturing plant, which is probably about 5 or 6 miles away from where I live. And they used to always have a massive influx of girls coming from her school into the aircraft works there to work experience and things like that. And they used to get a lot of talks as well from people like not just BAE Systems, but also we have a nuclear fuel manufacturing site near where I live as well, and places like that. And there were a lot of people going into school and trying to get girls more interested in STEM and going into engineering and things like that. Now, I couldn't tell you what percentage of girls actually left school and started doing things like that. I couldn't tell you that, but I know it wasn't many. No, I haven't done any research. No. But what I will say is it still isn't many, because it still seems to be like a male-dominated industry. And when I've been to these places and you see just people just milling around and what have you, it's still probably 75 to 80% guys who you see wandering around in, overalls and things like that, and even in suits and what have you. And it's still a very, very tiny minority of women working in these kinds of industries. Definitely.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's a lot of fun being. I hate to say it's fun being a minority, but it's there's something to be said, I think, when you're one of a few women. There's just something kind of, I don't know, uplifting about that. I want to get more and more women into it, and I want to make it totally normal to see women in these positions. But what I would say to girls is, don't be intimidated if only 20% or something in this occupation are female. That's that can be fun too. That's not something that should deter you.
Did you find, though, as you sort of earned your stripes, you got more respect as you sort of went through your career? From like the pilots, I mean, that were with you.
Yeah. So yes, I would say that once you have 4 bars, you a lot of this horse and pony show is behind you. I think that in a combination with, like, when I upgraded to captain, couple things. One, just times had changed, and so being a female pilot wasn't quite as you didn't stand out as much. So that was certainly helpful. And then, of course, when you're the captain, and whether people have a choice or not, you're in charge, and you're the person that they have to come to. And I did find that, when you're a first officer, there's a hierarchy. No matter what you look like, there's a hierarchy. And it's when you're at the bottom of that hierarchy, it's much easier for people to maybe to treat you a little bit less than, because they think that you're not qualified, or you're a quota, or you don't deserve to be there. But once you're at the top of that hierarchy, it's really difficult for anybody to, for any of that to trickle down, because as a captain, you get to set the tone in the cockpit. You get to decide what the atmosphere is. You get to, like, your idiosyncrasies are the ones that run things. And I think it's really great, because as a captain, you set the tone, and it's much, much easier in that position to go back and talk to the flight attendants and make sure that they know that you're on their side. And then if they have any problems, come to me. I will help you. I will back you up, whatever it is. And I mean that. And that makes a really big difference, with all of your crew. And same with the first officer. I really have a teamwork mentality. And when I'm in the cockpit, everybody's knowledge is helpful and only makes my job easier. If you're smarter than me, thank you. Share that. If you see something that I don't see, please point that out. One of us can't make a mistake without all of us making a mistake. We're all up there together. And so I think as a captain, a lot of the negativity that maybe might have been there was gone, because I was able to set the tone. And people, I think that if people realize that they are respected and appreciated, and that whatever their knowledge is, or their opinion is, or something that they observe, whether there's a flight attendant that hears an unusual noise in the back of the airplane, which please tell me, because I can't hear it, or if it's a first officer who thinks, shouldn't we be at this altitude? Shouldn't we be starting our descent now? If they know that their input is going to be appreciated and listened to and respected, which it will be, and that it all comes around. How you treat other people is how they treat you.
Yeah. I was going to ask, when you were doing the sort of longer haul ones, was there any particular stopovers that you really sort of celebrated that you were going to get to go there for a few days before you had to come home again?
Yeah, we never got to go a few days at United. We always had turns. We would get to stay for a day at the most, because they're very efficient in our scheduling. I would say, gosh, I never complained when I had to go to Hawaii. Honolulu was the best. Any time of year, send me to Hawaii. Europe, every city is fun, and a lot of it just has to do with who your crew is at the time. You could get like a crew that's really, really fun, and wherever you are, you have a good time. I loved Zurich just because it was so breathtakingly beautiful. I loved. Tell you where I really like going. I like going to New Delhi, India, just because it was so different than any place else. It was just an experience. They have people on elephants in the street, and cattle everywhere. It's just a really different experience, and so there's a
different world, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really cool. And then I loved going to Asia. That was just really, different countries in Asia. It's just a completely different culture, and so it's just really, really neat to get to experience that.
I suppose when you're getting snapshot shots of places, you can you don't have to buy travel brochures. You kind of go, yeah, that'll be worth a proper holiday at some point. So that's a real bonus of it.
That's actually true. You do think, would I want to come back here with my family and actually spend a few days here?
Yeah. Well, Hawaii sounds like the place, clearly.
Yeah. Hawaii, I would tell you, you can't beat Hawaii. It's Hawaii.
Absolutely.
Ian, we'll hand it to you. There's a question in chat.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how comfortable you're going to be answering this one, Laura, but the guy called Rob's asking, have you ever put my teeth in? Have you ever had an in-flight emergency where you thought this might get a little bit sketchy?
Well, okay, so for the major airlines, I'm going to say no, because the airplanes, like at the airlines, are extremely well maintained. The systems in the aircraft, everything has a backup for the backup, and then that backup has a backup. We have multiple pilots, and everybody is very skilled. Everyone could fall sick, and you just are down to one pilot, and that pilot's just fine, can get you wherever you're going very safely. Our training is phenomenal. The staff that we have on the ground at all times, our dispatchers and all of that are always there with us. So I mean, I've definitely been in situations where we've had problems, where we've had maybe failures, or flew into weather that was you would get very serious, not scared, but you would get very serious. But I can't say that I've ever had a situation where I really thought the flight, the outcome of the flight was in doubt. I will say though, before that, when I was flying single pilot freight, and when I was doing all sorts of these other, really unpleasant jobs, I mean, you go up sometimes and you'd be like, I'm crazy. Why am I here? What is going on? But it's not like that at the airlines. The airlines, it's very structured, very controlled. Everybody's professional. Everybody's very well trained.
Yeah,
the
that's
planes
it.
are incredibly maintained.
That's it. It's not just an engineering sort of group behind the pilots, but then there's people behind them, and there's people behind them, and it's such a massive. Yeah.
Oh, it is. It's a massive operation. People don't realize how many people are hard at work at the airline to make sure that you are safe.
Yeah, and these aircraft have got 1,001 redundancies, haven't they, these days? So if the system fails, there's at least one more that's going to back it up.
Yeah, I was actually going to add on to the question as well, where obviously you've been doing all these flights to all these lovely places, all these long haul flights, and if you see a bit of bad weather when you're coming in, it's going to be you're going to have to start crabbing and things like that. You sort of rub your hands together and you think, well, this will be a nice bit of a challenge. A bit like a video game.
Actually, there's a lot of truth to that. What you're saying is when bad weather moves in, or I've actually flown into wind shear where you've had to do, an escape maneuver from that. And although it sounds scary, it's really kind of gratifying when things start to go downhill a little bit, and all that training kicks in, and you get to work, as a team, and you always know what to do. There's it's very structured. There's a checklist for everything. Every emergency you could possibly fathom, we have been tortured with it in the flight simulator. So when things do get more serious, which occasionally happens, it's it's gratifying to get to work on those problems and come out successful, and just put all that hard work, make it worth it.
Yeah, and then a bit of a trivial question. This is just something I've wondered myself. If for instance you're on a long haul flight to wherever it might be, and the moment you get into the cockpit, when you start doing your checklist and your paperwork and bits and pieces, and you sat down, how long is it from you being sat down to the point where you think, I really, really need to stretch my legs, and you can actually get up and go for a bit of a wander around? I often sit and I often think about these massive flights, and I know you do. You're changing pilots, after a few hours or whatever. But I mean, I drive my car or I drive a wagon or something, and I just think to myself, after an hour, I could do just to jump out and just stretch my legs and get back in again. But it's a bit different.
You should get to an hour, really.
Yeah.
That's a funny question. I'm going to say hours. I mean, some of our flights you're in the cockpit for 15 plus hours, and but being in the cockpit is not the same as being in the car, because in the car, you're in one position and that's it. But the cockpit, you can get up and stretch around in the cockpit without leaving. And even in your seat, you take off your shoulder harnesses, and we have pegs that you can put your feet up on. So you can recline, you put your feet up. You kind of shift around. Our seats are pretty big. We've got, they're all captain seats. We've got nice armrests. So they're not, they're all sheepskin covered. They're not uncomfortable. You're not trapped like you are in a car. So the cockpit, it's not like sitting in a coach seat in the back and you're just like dying to get up and move. You really have a lot of freedom in your seat.
Right. So it's not as bad as what I thought then. And so you don't have the other, you don't have it the other way around as well, where you just get too comfortable.
Feet up on the cockpit and everything.
Feet up and I'm back of your head.
Hey, hold on. Hey, Nicholas, can you turn the lights on in here, please? Sorry, my son just walked in. Yeah, there we go. The sun's just starting to set here. I'm like, oh, it's starting to get dark. Thanks, honey. Yeah, I don't know what the question was, but I just got distracted there.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I was asking about if it was the other side of the coin. If you got too comfortable into your
if you get too
pilot
comfortable
seat and you had your feet up.
I won't admit that I've flown with a couple guys that have fallen asleep in their seats, because that's never happened. But no, not really. It's interesting because you're really busy in the cockpit. I mean, people think you're just sitting there, but you actually are busy. There's always like flight attendants coming and going. There's at least one other pilot to talk with. You're obviously listening to air traffic control the entire time, and there really isn't a lull. There really isn't. So, and the view is always breathtaking. You never get used to it. So it's not like, when I'm driving my car or whatever, I do get really bored. But in the cockpit, you always have that energy. You just do, and you're comfortable, but in a different sort of way. You kind of feel like you're cocooned in there, and you just feel safe and secure and comfortable. And you're always reading your instruments, or looking at the approach that you're going to be doing, or looking at your charts. You're always doing something.
Yeah, so you got plenty to do while you're up there, haven't you? Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Does it ever cross your mind when you're flying that you've got sort of 200, 300 souls in the back that you're responsible for?
No. It's
just great.
Yeah.
No, I mean, not the way like that, like you're thinking. I mean, yes, in that, like if we're delayed or if we get a turbulence or something, then immediately you go to your passengers and you want to make sure that they're okay, or that they're not scared. If we get into turbulence, you want to immediately get a change of altitude, because you're always thinking about your passengers in the back, and you're always thinking about their comfort and all of that. But it's not like you're up there stressed because I've got 200 lives that I'm responsible for. Although, I mean, I shouldn't say that, because you are aware of them.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. That's fine.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're aware of them, but it's not. You try to make sure they're happy back there.
And what are you like as a passenger? First of all, do you get the good seats?
Yes. Okay. So, I'm fortunate in that I'm small, so I can fit in a coach seat, and I'm probably not tortured like a lot of people are tortured. But I really only fly first class, so I think
you're not wrong podcast, Tom.
Yeah, no.
So I don't know how you feel now.
United, when two out ready. Roll the red carpet out and everything.
They give us first class seats so that we're rested, and so you kind of get acclimated to that. And when I fly standby, you get whatever seat is empty, which usually is first class. That usually is like what's left over. In fact, I went on my one son that just walked in and out. We just flew to London and back last year, and we just took whatever seat was empty in the airplane, and we got first class both ways. So,
wow.
It's the way that it goes. But nothing wrong with coach, but it's not usual to be back there.
No, are you sort of known as well? So when you're in this first class seat in this United coming over to London, these stewardesses are walking around sort of looking at you, thinking, "Oh, I know who this lady is here. We have to give her a bit of extra special treatment."
Yeah, they have it on their manifest that we're company employees,
Right.
and I don't think they treat us any differently because they don't tell the people sitting around you that you're a company employee.
Yeah.
And like I'm not the only, there's company employees dispersed throughout, throughout any flight. You'd be surprised how many people are flying that are actually, employees that are going to or from work or whatever they're doing. So, we're not, I don't think we're treated any different. We will get, like, if there's just so many meals, they'll come to us last because a passenger obviously should have their first choice. And then we get, what didn't go. I mean, things like that, but that's,
you can live with that, can't you?
Yeah, I can deal with that.
It's not bad, is it? It's not a bad life to live.
It's not bad at all, is it?
Yeah.
I think you've earned it.
Vision in my head of just like, I'm here now.
Yeah.
I'll work with this airline.
The time now. I don't ever bother the flight attendants.
Stewardess. But no, there's a quick question in there, and then we'll get on to something else that we want to sort of mention that you have. Marco Barrett asking, did you ever fly to Manchester Airport in the UK, which is his local airport, and of course Ian's local airport?
It's my local airport as well. Yeah.
So did you ever fly into Manchester?
No, I mean, in Europe, I've only been to, destinations that United Airlines flies into, and those would be, like London Heathrow, only the major airports. So I'd love to fly to Manchester sometime, but no, I haven't been to any regional airports in Europe.
Do you know that, Ian? Manchester's a regional airport now.
Well, it's the best airport we've got up here. We don't have we don't have LAXs in this country, do we? Let's be honest. We haven't got the room, have we?
No, absolutely not. So very quickly, we just want to jump on to as well as obviously the book that you have, which you can get on Amazon or the American Amazon at the moment. I don't know if can you get on the UK version? I don't know, but we probably can. But at the moment, you can get it on Amazon. But you also have a website as well, which you specifically asked us to sort of mention for you to have a chat about, because it's got some really good, interesting stuff on it, doesn't it?
Yeah. So thank you. Yeah. I there you go. So I have a website. It's just it's my name's, it's laurasavino747.com. And what I love about this website is that on the last tab that you can fly, I have, I think, $6.2 million worth of scholarships. There you go. And so there's a bunch of clickable links. So I have just some basic, it's a really good resource. If you want to, if you're young or if you're not young, if you want to start to fly, or if you just want some like one location where it's got, everything sort of in one spot, I've put it all together on that page on my website. And we have lots and lots of scholarships that are offered, aviation scholarships. I have a summary of all the different requirements to start to fly and different resources, some links to like Aviate and just different, just all a bunch of different resources. So hopefully people will go to that if they have questions, and it'll just be, whatever trigger maybe somebody needs to take that first step, go to an airport, take a discovery flight, and just see if this is something that they want to do or not.
It's it's a really good sort of bit of motivation for a lot of people that want to kind of get involved, and obviously like we were talking about before, having like young people get inspired by this sort of thing by having these projects available to them, because for a lot of people to get into the aviation industry, especially nowadays, can be very tricky. So these sort of projects and everything do make it a lot easier, don't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot out there. There's a lot of different Young Eagles. There's just a lot of different organizations now that will open the doors for people that want to explore aviation. And So okay.
Sorry
So
about
you're going
that.
through my website here.
Sorry.
That was me on the 747. In fact, you know who took that picture? Bob Bragg, who was the surviving first on the KLM Pan Am collision down in the Tenerife, the Canary Islands. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's the largest air disaster in the history of the world still to this day. I think 583 people were burned to death in that accident. In any case, Bob was a pilot for Pan Am for that accident, and then he came over when the United took the Pacific routes from Pan Am. They took the pilots in the 747s with them, and I got to fly with Bob Bragg, and that was actually, this is in my book. It was just a very privileged position for me to suddenly find myself in, and Bob, who, any case, he survived this accident, and I flew with him. I think we flew 6 trips together, all trans-Pacific, and we happened to be in a Pan Am 747, and he brought me through the entire Tenerife accident from his perspective. And he took a piece of paper. We had like 13, 14 hours, and he drew out the entire accident. He drew out the airport, did an airport diagram, and he brought me through what every single aircraft did, what everybody was doing, what the controllers were doing, step by step. And he relived this entire accident in the cockpit that was the actual cockpit that the accident occurred in. And he showed me everything that they were doing from the actual seat in that cockpit. It was just, I completely got sidetracked after you put that picture up, but it was just a really, really, really privileged, amazing experience to get to talk to him and listen to him. And he taught me a lot. He taught me a lot about, it's downloading there. There we go. Any case, so that's all. He took that picture of me. I had like no pictures of myself. This is before there were cell phones, and he actually took that and gave it to me.
It takes some bravery to revisit the story as well on his behalf. So it must have been difficult for him as well, and to sort of teach you sort of everything that went wrong on that day. Of course,
he did, and he told me a lot of stuff that like I had never heard. And he's been interviewed on like the Discovery Channel and a whole bunch. He's done different documentaries, and he told me stuff that like he's not said in any of those. Just like what he was experiencing, what the other pilots were experiencing, the whole thing from the pilot's perspective, which is something I find missing almost when it comes to almost everything. When it comes to 9/11, when it comes to the Tenerife accident, there's so many books, movies, documentaries, and all these events, and rarely, if ever, do you see the pilot's perspective in any of these incidents, which I'm not sure why that is. But they don't ask the pilots. They will interview passengers and flight attendants and people on the ground, but they don't go right to the source and say, what were you guys, what were you experiencing? What were you doing in there?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Sort of 9/11, they obviously made the film, and I could name one of the flight attendants, but like you say, the pilots are sort of the forgotten people that day on the aircraft.
I was going to mention Sully. Now we've all seen the movie, haven't we? As Sully, and yeah, I presume you've watched the movie yourself, Laura. And from a pilot's perspective, what do you think of? Perhaps we'll never be privy to what happened on that day. 100%. We can only go off what the movie says, but like the investigation and things afterwards, because that's sort of from a pilot's point of view, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the movie was very much a Hollywood version. I don't know. I've not spoken to Sully. I don't think that he was attacked quite the way the movie portrayed it. I think he was a hero from beginning to end from everyone's perspective.
Absolutely, yeah.
And he was, the movie very much Hollywooded it up and made it into something, something that I don't think it was very accurate. I will say this about that whole incident, and I'm really only just parroting what Sully has said over and over and over again. He did an amazing job. But there were two pilots in the cockpit. It wasn't even Sully's leg. The other pilot, Jeff Skiles, was actually the flying pilot. Sully did take it for the landing, but Jeff was the flying pilot when this whole emergency occurred.
Cool.
And he never got any credit. They always say the pilot, as if the plane had a pilot. It didn't. Had two pilots that were working as a team. Together, those gentlemen got the airplane down safely. It took both of them working. The teamwork and the professionalism and the training came together. And Sully's the first one. He has said that over and over again, but the media doesn't seem to want to like pick up on that. No. And the other thing that I will say that also Sully has said is that he did everything right, but I don't know if any other pilot would have done it differently. Sully, the impression that seems to be out there is, thank God it was Sully. If it wasn't Sully, all these people would be dead. And I think that's a little bit ridiculous, because anybody who is a captain flying for a major airline is competent and qualified and trained. And no different than Sully, I think that anybody who was in Sully's seat would have been equally competent and qualified and trained.
Yeah, and I think he found himself in a unique situation, didn't he? In a unique position.
Yeah, and he did, him and Jeff, the two of them did everything right. They put it in the water. They had no choice. I don't think there was anything else they could have done. They had lost both their engines. They had no power. They couldn't fly over the city and hope that they made it to a runway. The river was there, and that's what they had to do. They had no choice. But we do practice water landings, in the simulator. We do train for this. This is, especially flying. I don't know about US Air, but at United, our flights, the majority of our flights go over water. And so ditching is a big part of our training. Landing in the water is a big part of our training. So what he did just fell in line with our training. And I would don't want to be presumptuous, but I would say that any pilot who would have been a captain on that aircraft would have known what to have done and would have done the same thing successfully.
Yeah, like you sort of alluded to, he almost seems a little bit embarrassed by what's come his way subsequently. From sort of YouTube clips, and I've read his book as it happens, he does seem just like a genuine, humble, sort of family-orientated bloke.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. He has over and over again said, I did what any pilot would have done, but nobody wants to repeat that. And he's right. He's very skilled and trained and competent, and he did a very, very good job. But it's not like everybody would have died if it wasn't for him. No. Another pilot would have also, I think, done a good job.
Everyone's got the capability to be able to kind of pull off something like that. It's just the fact that it happened in that situation and in that circumstance as well, which obviously made it the sort of the I don't want to say grand spectacle, but the I don't know what to call it really. The big deal that it is, sort of thing.
He's a really good guy too, and I think that was a part of it. Is that he's just a really likable, good guy, and so I think that also played into it. Is that like look at this, this wonderful gentleman who was put into that position. So
absolutely. But, we'll go with one more question and then we'll start to wrap it up. I did say it would go quite quick, and it certainly has. Rob Brown Plane Spotting says, from your time in aviation, is there any funny stories that still make you laugh?
Oh my gosh, so many funny stories. So pilots are all jokesters. I mean, they're real characters. They're constantly playing practical jokes on each other. Gosh, off the top of my head, do I remember? I don't even know if this is appropriate, but I remember flying on one trip. We were going over to, I think we were going to London actually, and the captain went back to the blue room, and just when he was gone, we hit a pocket of turbulence, and it got pretty choppy really quickly, and it was passing, and the captain came back into the cockpit, and he pointed down to his shoes, and his shoes were all wet. And he said, "Look what you made me do." And of course, he just poured water on his shoes, everybody. But it's funny. We get into turbulence, and he totally we just cracked up over that. He came in and blamed us all for causing him to have whatever. we just like to happens all the time. I remember in another flight, we were flying to Hawaii, and one of the other pilots in the flight had brought his whole family, and he had a 12-year-old son, and the captain decided to play a joke on him and had the flight attendant carry his shoes back and give them to his son. By the way, his family was sitting in first class, and told him that he's required to shine the captain's shoes. And the kid was 12, and he didn't know, like, he was at that age where he didn't know if it was a joke or if he really was supposed to shine the captain's shoes. He shined the captain's shoes, and we were laughing because his father was obviously in the cockpit, was in on the joke. But just like, we're always horsing around in that respect.
Yeah, so these long trips, I suppose you need something to help pass the time a little bit when you're sort of just between waypoints and that.
Yeah, you do. And I had one captain that would carry around that plastic vomit, and he would like put it on your seat when you came back. Just corny stuff.
Nothing like a bit of light-hearted laughter as well, especially if you're doing a 15-hour flight as well. You got to be able to do it. So
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I know Ian's just left for a second, but he'll be back in a minute. But we'll sort of begin to wrap everything up at the moment. So we'll jump into some extra stuff once Ian comes back. But did say it'll go quick, didn't I?
Yeah.
It's just flown by already. It's frightening, but there's still so much that you can cover because, like I say, because of your sort of career that you've had with all these different airlines. There's still sort of untouched like stories and everything else that we could still chat about. So we will definitely have to get you back on again just to go over those if you're happy to do so.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Excellent. Fantastic. We'll jump into the next bit anyway while Ian does his thing. But we are going to start to wrap everything up now. So this is the part of the show where we start to sort of give out some shout outs to quite literally anybody you like, really. And there's many people. And his ears must have been burning because he's now back.
Sorry about that.
No, sorry. So we're going to do some shout outs. If anybody watching has any shout outs for anybody, it could either be us, it could be Laura, it could be anybody that you know. Chuck them into the chat and we will get them put up onto the screen so that hopefully the people you shout out see them. But we're going to put you on the spot, Laura, as I said we would. And if you want to give any shout outs for anybody that might be watching or any sort of family, etc., now's your opportunity.
Shout outs. Gosh, I don't know. I have a couple of best friends, Donna and Deanna. Thank you. They're like always have my back. I've known them for many, 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 many years. And my friend Lisa, she's amazing. And I think just other the women that are behind like these different organizations like ISA Plus 21 and 99s that just are out there volunteering their time to just to support other women. I love that. It's something I wish that I had from the beginning, and I have so much respect for them and appreciation, and really that's it. That's and my kids for putting up with me. That's it. And my parents for the freedom to make my own mistakes.
Keep it short and sweet. That's absolutely fine. It's not a problem. Steve, over to you.
Well, first and foremost, like Laura, thank you so much for coming on. It's been incredible, like an education and sort of how much enthusiasm you have, and sort of how obviously happy it makes you to talk about what you did for sort of a love for living and that. And obviously, I hope the book does well, and the encouragement of getting women into aviation sort of carries on going well for you and that. So just thank you again for coming on tonight.
Well, thank you.
Tom and Ian, as ever, it's always a privilege, always fun.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one was not a shout out, more of a in remembrance, because unfortunately one of our customers at work passed away during the week, and he was always a really decent bloke, good for a chat, and made sure I always left with a bottle of Coke and and that. So it'll be a sad miss. So a shout out to him, unfortunately, this week.
Condolences and all that. Yeah. Ian, over to you.
Yeah, so I'd just like to shout out you, Laura, for coming on tonight, this afternoon, sharing your experiences. It's been a lot of fun, and it's been really interesting. Oh, sorry, I've got a frog in my throat. Excuse me.
Riveting stuff.
I beg your pardon.
That is riveting stuff.
So a big shout out to you, Laura, for coming on and entertaining us and some of your stories and about your life and everything. And it's been really fascinating, interesting. And I can confirm that your book is available. You can't really see that, but it is available on Amazon. Yeah, there you go. It's available in Amazon UK.
Oh, excellent.
Yep, £10.95.
Lovely.
Yeah, and free with Amazon Prime, free delivery with Amazon Prime, and you can also download it as a Kindle as well. So happy days.
What I should have done for that is I should just taken us all off the screen and just let you do your thing. Just let you sell it. Just sell the book.
Yeah. So 308 pages. 304 pages.
Hold on. Hang on.
Customer reviews. Yeah. So this is Jet Boss. Can we see that? It's not a very good. Oh, there we go. There's Jet Boss, a female pilot on taking risks and flying high. £10.95 on Amazon with free delivery on Amazon Prime, and it's also downloadable as a Kindle edition. And you can actually get a free sample of the book as a little taster for you as well. So there you go. If you want to go out and purchase that, it will make an ideal Christmas gift. There we go.
Thank you.
Is that okay? That?
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Yeah. Next time you're watching Friends on TV, you might just see me pop up advertising it in commercials.
Ian, lean back again, mate. Yeah, just stay there.
All right. Yeah. Can you see him? Yeah. I've got a moose head on my wall up here, so yeah.
Wow.
Position, isn't
You guys
it? Yeah,
are
it's my moose
I
head.
need to give a shout out to you guys for inviting me on and just cracking me up this whole time.
Great to us.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, so shout out to you two as well, Tom, Steve, and everybody who's been listening in tonight and asking the questions. It's been a lot of fun. It really has.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. So, I'm just going to throw this in here. Mary McCutcheon says, love this show. I'm going to plug it into my 99s. Headset? What? Someone? I don't know. Is
Grey Blue. We need her to chirp up. She'll know.
I want to say it's like a headset type thing.
No, the 99s is the name of Amelia Earhart's female pilot organization.
Oh, okay.
I'm actually the scholarship chairman for my section of the 99s. I'm trying to get some money out there to young girls to get them into aviation. So she's just talking about that organization.
Oh, right, gotcha.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you very much, Mary.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, Mary. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. If you're done with your shout outs, Ian, I'll do mine.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Good stuff. So first shout out is, of course, to Laura, who's been wonderful. And the only way to describe it is educational, because as we do with lots of people in aviation, we always sit and we always listen to stories and, what it's like to be on that side of everything. And each time it's an education for us because we're learning a lot more. And you've been wonderful this evening. I'm glad that we made you laugh. We said we would. But no, a big thank you for devoting what we're on now, an hour and 45 minutes of your time this afternoon, our evening. So yeah, big thank you to you. I'm looking forward to getting you back on the show.
Well, thanks. Thank you.
Ian and got it this time, Steve as well, for doing another wonderful job co-hosting this wacky and bizarre podcast. So, big thank you to you guys. A big shout out to everybody that's been watching this evening. There's some sort of healthy numbers and some new names in there as well. So a big thank you to you. Hopefully you'll stick around for more in the future. And of course, as always, a big shout out to sort of the NHS health workers in the UK and any sort of health workers around the world during this obviously pandemic. And more importantly as well, all of the hardworking key workers who are just amazing. And you know who you are because you are like without you, the place wouldn't run properly. And just, key workers are amazing and, they do a lot for us. So it's about time that they had their, appreciation given to them. And, we love you. So, a big shout out to you guys as well. So, with that being said, we're going to start to end the show. So once again, big thank you to you, Laura, and everyone watching this evening. And all that's left for us to do. Actually, before we do that, I will just quickly bring it up again. You can follow Laura on Twitter at Laura Savino 747. Definitely recommend doing that because it's always a lot of fun seeing your posts. Definitely. All that's left to say is if you like the stream, leave a thumbs up on it. If you're new around here, do consider subscribing, and we will say goodbye. So we'll go around the room again. So Laura, if you'd like to say goodbye to those still watching.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen, so much for having me, and goodbye. And everybody, put my Twitter feed up there. I just want to say I love. No, I'm not saying I'm saying that you put it up there. I have so much fun on Twitter, and there are so many just wonderful people on Twitter. I know Twitter can get a bad rap sometimes, but I just think it's the most amazing forum, and there are so many great people on there, and I just appreciate all the feedback that I get or that I get to give to people, and I just love it. So thank you, everybody in social media. That's a big, huge support system.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Definitely worth following Laura on Twitter. Steve, you want to say goodbye to everyone?
Yeah, once again, just to reiterate, thank you, Laura, and thank you for everyone who's watched at home. Have a good, safe week, and we'll look forward to catching you the next time. And take care, everyone.
Ian.
Yep. Yeah. So just thanks again, Laura, and thanks to everybody who's been in the chat tonight. And have a good week, and we'll see you again this time next week.
Unless that changes, that's to
Unless
be decided.
It changes, it could be. It could do.
That's to be decided. All that's left for me to say is a big thank you to everybody. Key workers watching, you're amazing. Don't change. Keep doing what you're doing. And again, we'll let you know when we're back. At this moment, it's this time next week, 7:30 next Wednesday. Don't know what we're doing yet. We just like to do it off the cusp, so we'll let you know at this point. But yeah, all that's left to say is have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you 7:30 p.m. next Wednesday.
Next week.
So from us, goodbye, take care, stay safe, and see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.